Hi everyone and welcome to Write Your Narrative. We are today once again in Wynwood at the Art of Hip Hop Museum, and I do have a very special guest. Back in 2013 in Wynwood, I was introduced to a different form of street art. And I got to meet an incredibly talented young lady based in New York at the time who covered and somehow graffitied some found objects and Wynwood walls boulders, those famous Wynwood wall boulders, and also an entire building facade on 2nd Avenue with yarn. How can you explain graffiti and yarn? I mean, I still don't get it. Anyway. So her name is Oleg. This was my very, very first introduction to yarn bombing. Not much happened after that until 2020-21 when a few small crocheted art pieces started appearing on fences in Wynwood. Interesting. But then, since last year, more and more yarn graffiti pieces appeared overnight, and then they were signed La Fibraa. So, who is La Fibraa? Her name is Gina. And she is my guest today on the podcast. Gina, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and excited to be talking about yarn bombing and what it is that I do.
Yeah, yarn bombing, fiber art, that fiber art movement and all those things. I mean, this is such an incredible way of expressing yourself on the street. This is street art with yarn, fabrics, and all kinds of found material that you use, that you weave, that you crochet. I mean, this is absolutely, to me, fantastic.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So just to tell our listeners, we just had a little outing.
Trip.
Yes,
field trip.
Yeah, a little field trip in Wynwood, right across from the famous boombox, and you installed one of your piece over there, so your latest piece. So if you want to tell us a little bit about it, the fabric that you used, the material that you used, and the meaning of that piece. And the title of the piece, because it's got a title too.
Yes. So the piece I just installed with you on the fence across from the boombox is called Waves of Caution. And I constructed it out of caution tape that I found abandoned on the side of the road. I pulled my car over in the middle of traffic and yeeted out of the side of my car and ran to go collect this caution tape. And then I sewed the caution tape onto denim that I had thrifted, and also crocheted some circular pieces out of plastic bags, like not reusable plastic shopping bags. Yeah, Publix, Winn-Dixie, and Target specifically.
All right, you add a little color to it.
Yeah. I raid people's closets for bags full of bags because everybody has those bags of bags in their closet.
Absolutely.
So I raid those closets for the bags of bags and then turn the plastic shoppers into yarn and then make pieces.
Wow, this was such an experience just watching you installing that piece on the fence with some zip tie, because you want the piece to last a little as long as possible, like any other piece of street art, graffiti art in Wynwood. You know, eventually they're going to be taken away. Someone is going to be stealing them.
Yeah. And that's, I think, one of the hardest parts spiritually of like what I do is that I spend hours crocheting and weaving and sewing, making these pieces, and then they're temporary. I have to literally practice surrender and absolutely let it go. I've had pieces that have lasted 24 hours on a fence. I've had pieces that have lasted a week and then they disappear. I don't know where they go, but I hope they're happy wherever they are.
Yes, well, from time to time you drop some of those La Fibraa pieces on, actually for the people to take, because I've been collecting some.
Yeah, and that's something that a lot of yarn bombers do, is just make small little pieces. There's a woman that came before me, her name is Kern, and she started yarn bombing Wynwood and Miami and the neighborhoods shortly after COVID, I believe. And
I think this was in 1919 or 20 years.
Yeah, she was a great resource for me, and she started leaving pieces around for people to find. And so I think it's a common practice for yarn bombers or people who do fiber art, especially ones who do street art, to leave small pieces like little presents.
Yes, it is. It is. Well, and this is a way for the people to take it home, eventually get to know your name, because usually you sign those pieces. And this is what's very, very exciting. I mean, I had so many different people. I've met so many different artists, and I met so many people on the podcast. Everybody who's part of that street art community who was invited to the podcast and give me a little bit of a story, a little backstory. And thank you so much once again for sharing those stories. I mean, this is quite impressive. So I mentioned Oleg, and this was really something new to me and new to Winwood. She's still doing some incredible stuff. But now we have the local people. This is what I've been doing for this past 15 years. It's just rooting for my local artists.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm born and raised in Miami.
Wow.
My Cuban grandmother and great grandmother were both seamstresses. They taught me to sew. I honed the craft a little bit more when I went to high school at Dash. And I've always sewn. I taught myself to crochet 10 years ago, watching YouTube. And you know, after years and years of making baby blankets for people, I was like, I really want to take this to another level. What if I made baby blankets for my city, like cozy little baby blankets for my city, and then wrapped poles? But what would they say? You know, what would they say? And so I decided to start writing haikus.
Okay, this is something we need to talk about those haikus, because I was absolutely not aware, and I still don't really know what they are. Explain our listeners what haiku...
It's a type of poem.
Okay.
It's 3 syllables and then 5 syllables and then 3 syllables. Very simple, 3 lines. Sometimes it's 5-7-5. Sometimes it's 3-5-3. But they follow that format of counting syllables. And the first 3 pieces I dropped a year ago, the theme was love. So the haikus were about love. And then the second 3 that I dropped, maybe a month and a half after that, the theme was overdevelopment and like the changing of the city. And then the third 3 that I dropped, the theme of those 3 haikus was censorship. And those 3 pieces went up in Books and Books for Banned Book Month.
How do you actually decide on the location or the surface where you're going to be doing your yarn bombing?
Oh,
you
man.
want to be in the mainstream? You want to be a little tucked away? You want people to see it? You want those pieces to live as long as they can?
Yeah, obviously you want them to live on a pole or wherever as long as they possibly can. And that's not always up to you. Like I mentioned before, you know, you have to just kind of put them where you put them and then let them go. And I've had some luck, you know, with some poles, and I've had some bad luck with some other poles. You know, I wanted to do the 3 that were about overdevelopment. Those 3 were made entirely out of recycled pieces. And I literally gave myself a bone spur because I stripped a fiber optic cable and crocheted with the wire inside.
Oh, you use that too. You use really all kinds of materials.
And so crocheting with wire is hard. I gave myself a bone spur in my hand, put it up on a pole outside of a restaurant here in Winwood, and within a week it was gone. And I was like, wow, where did it go? You know, like I spent all this time and all this effort. And it was, like I said, it was just like, let it go. It has to be, I hope it's happy wherever it's gone, you know?
Most likely those people, and I am one of them, throughout these years, I found quite a few pieces on the streets that I had the feeling that I was stealing at some point. And me as an art lover, I do collect those pieces. We used to have a group of artists 10 years ago doing those free art Fridays where they were dropping off some little pieces of art, and then everybody was following them on social media. This is something also you do with those little La Fibraa stickers that you are doing.
I love those. I love those free art Fridays. It's so fun.
Yes.
It's like an art exchange, or you can swap things with people. I absolutely love those. Those are a lot of fun. You know, obviously you choose a spot that is visible and where you hope that people will see it, right? Because you're making street art. You're just making art and putting it on the street. And it's a really democratic way for people to enjoy art, because art is really meant to be enjoyed by everybody.
Absolutely.
So you hope that you're going to place it in a spot where the most people will see it and the most people will appreciate it.
Correct.
And so at that point, that's just how it's chosen. I'm like, well, I'm just going to put it here because this looks like it gets a lot of foot traffic. Hopefully I don't, get arrested for vandalism throwing it up.
Oh, not in
I'm
Wynwood.
defacing public property. And then I have to just let it go.
It's the exact same mentality of the street artists, the graffiti writers, when they all tag and do some amazing graffiti pieces in their neighborhood or here in Wynwood. We know in Wynwood, those graffiti pieces, unless you go closer to I-95 or some specific spots where they tend to last a little bit longer. But if you are on 2nd Avenue where everybody is, those graffiti pieces, they just last sometime 24 hours, sometime a week, a month, and then they're buffed. And then someone comes over and repaint them.
Yeah.
So this is like an ever-changing...
landscape.
Landscape. But this is what's exciting for us.
And what's funny is that even the pieces that I have put up, like one now that I showed you that's on Northwest 5th.
Yes.
Even the pieces that I put up that have been up for a year and have been untouched, they get bleached by the sun. The weather changes them. They end up looking completely different than they did when I initially put them up a year ago.
Yeah.
Some would say uglier. I would say they're weathered and they're beautiful in their own way.
Absolutely. When we were installing that piece an hour ago by the boombox, we got to meet some people who were touring Wynwood. So how do they usually respond, those people, to your art whenever they see you or not? What kind of a response do you have?
Usually when people catch me either putting up a piece, when people catch me putting up a piece, I get a pretty positive response. I did a collaboration last December with Kern where she, gave us a prompt and we all put pieces up on a fence. And I did have some people drive by in the little buggies and take pictures of me as I was putting it up. And I usually get a pretty positive response if somebody catches me or if they tag me in social media and repost.
Hopefully they do.
Yeah.
So the response is usually pretty good. Have you ever faced some challenges, some backlash maybe sometimes?
Not yet necessarily. The backlash is internal.
It's internal?
The backlash comes from me and my own, crazy thinking telling me things like, you're not a street artist. You're just a crocheter. You just play with fiber and yarn and plastic bags and other different materials that you make things with. And this isn't legitimate. You don't have an MFA. You don't belong in a museum. All of these little things that like my crazy head tells me, or why are you doing this? Why are you spending so much time? You're just going to put it up and it's going to disappear anyway,
Yeah.
So that's where the backlash comes from. The backlash comes from me, but thanks to really supportive people like my friend Lynn Garcia, my other friend Dee, they just encourage me to just keep going and keep making the art. And I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful that I have strong women that I've connected with in the local art community who just keep telling me to push and keep going forward.
So you're still doubting that you are an artist. I can tell you are an artist.
100%.
You are. Okay. Why would you?
The imposter syndrome is real.
Oh my gosh. All right. So let's get back doing those baby blankets. And this is it. That's it. End of a story.
No, absolutely not. Now that I've started, it's funny because now that I've started, it's like I can't go back. And I've had a couple people ask me like, why do you do what you do? And the only answer that I can come up with is because I must. Now that I've started, I'm like compelled to just keep going. There's just this internal, like, I have to make art. I don't have a choice,
So the streets are calling you.
Totally calling
The streets are calling
Absolutely.
you. Gina, we have a blank fence.
Blank fence, a blank pole. It needs yarn.
It needs yarn. It needs some love. And there's a little TLC.
Absolutely.
Yes. And then I'm sure tons of people, when they come to Wynwood, they take pictures of the graffiti, of the street art pieces, of the murals and everything. I'm sure. There's a gentleman right across from Wynwood Walls who's doing those little sculptures also on one pole. And then you have people who put some buttons also.
Yeah.
You've seen this? There's some little poles are covered with little buttons, one nail and buttons. Have you done this?
I have not yet, but it's funny that you mentioned that because when I was toying with the idea of doing street art, maybe a year and a half ago, I was actually walking around Wynwood and I saw the clay faces on the trees.
Yeah, those clay faces.
And I saw the buttons and I was like, if this is street art, then why wouldn't what I do be street art also? Why couldn't I do it? And then the answer is you absolutely can. It's just whether or not you're motivated and whether or not you want to, and whether or not you feel compelled to do it regardless of the response, because it's something that you're just drawn to and that you must do.
Yeah. So actually you don't even expect a response. Just like, okay, this is it. I need to express myself. I need to go on the street. I need to do what I love doing.
Exactly.
And bring a little smile into people's faces.
And I think that as street art becomes more varied, right? As we have more sculpture, as we have more faces on trees, as we have more yarn bombing, it actually becomes so much more interesting and diverse, and like the possibilities just become endless of what you could do. Yeah.
I can totally see that. It's absolutely endless. So you were talking about using some wires and everything. So you really are using all kinds of material. When Joanne Fabric closed the shops like a couple of months ago, I'm sure you went to the store and rated everything.
I definitely stocked up, especially on sewing materials. I hate buying things without touching them first. To me, it's very tactile. You know,
okay.
I want to touch the
I can see that.
I want to touch the material. I want to see what it feels like. I want to know how it's going to be to work with it. Is it going to be challenging? Is it going to be hard? But I do get a lot of my materials from the scrapyard. I get a lot of my materials from bags and bags. I get a lot of my materials, you know, from some unexpected different places. And I do make a lot of traditional yarn bomb art where it's just crocheted and then wrapped around a pole. But I also do a lot of different things too. So I'm not really concerned, because even though one of the major retailers is closing down, anything can be a fiber.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, anything can be a fiber. I mean, those Cat 5 internet cables that I stripped and then wove with, that's a fiber, you know?
It is.
And it was found in a dumpster in the scrapyard. I originally made that piece as part of the 3 that were kind of centered around the message of overdevelopment. And then I was undecided of what I wanted to do with it. And I was like, it'll be homeless. I'll just put it up on different fences and take pictures of it in different places all over Miami. And I have done that, but I think now it needs just a permanent fixed place. So it's going to be zip tied to a fence here shortly.
Well, maybe we're going to have to find a place maybe high on a higher ground.
Oh, that's not a bad idea.
That piece could live a little bit longer.
That's not a bad
something
idea.
less accessible.
Yeah.
Like I made this past Art Basel. There's a guy who's doing some wire art.
Yes.
And he hangs. It's absolutely fantastic too. And those pieces are hard to get. So they do live on the street. So we're going to have to find a special spot for that special piece.
Yes, I hope to find a spot for it soon.
Yeah. So how do they usually speak to you, those spots? How do you need some foot traffic? That's what we mentioned. Yeah,
foot traffic is always nice. A place that there isn't a whole lot of foot traffic very early in the morning, which is usually when I go and hang these things.
Okay.
So that I
at the crack of dawn, you go.
So that I could go and do it secretly or clandestinely, you know, and then zip out of there. But it's just whatever. I will be driving. I'll be driving down the streets of Wynwood or walking the streets of Wynwood, and something will call to me, and then I'll feel, you know,
you say, all right,
something needs to go here. And then my sketchbook is also like full of ideas of spots that I really like those planters that are on Northwest 24th. I think there's some empty planters there that are just begging to be yarn bombed.
All right, well, this could be the next project.
I think we need a yarn garden over there.
In a yarn garden?
Yeah.
Oh, that would be so much fun, much fun. So I really had to do a little bit of research about yarn bombing because I didn't know much. So yarn, it's usually assimilated to a lady stuff, the old lady stuff maybe.
Yeah.
So thank you to a new generation of people putting this up on the street. But we do have someone called the godmother of knitting and crochet graffiti. Her name is Magda Sayeg. Have you ever met her or heard about her?
I've never met her, but I have definitely heard about her. And I've heard of Olek, who you mentioned before.
Yes.
Olek did these community pieces that were huge called you can look them up. It's called Love Across the USA, where they basically took a picture of a famous woman from history with a quote and then broke it into pieces and then assigned a piece to different crocheters all across the country. And I participated in one of those. And that was really fun. And that was kind of what got me started on the idea. You know, other people that have really inspired me aren't even yarn bombers necessarily, but like Bisa Butler and her quilts. When I saw Bisa Butler's work and her quilts, I was like, this is absolutely stunning and so inspiring. There's another one. She works out of Philly and she yarn bombs right now. Her name is Lace in the Moon. That's how she goes by on Instagram. I don't know her name, but there's a lot of artists out there that are really inspiring to me and that I just absolutely, I love their work. I just see it and I see it and it compels me to just create and keep going, you know?
Keep going here in Miami and eventually traveling maybe the country and overseas to install some of your pieces.
But yeah, like these wraps, these freeform crocheted pieces or sewn pieces or woven pieces, you know, they're just going to be up and around. Like, keep an eye out. Anything that says La Fibraa, that's me.
La Fibraa. So, by the way, where the name comes from? What's the idea of your La Fibraa name?
I really wanted to connect what I do to my Hispanic heritage. A lot of the pieces that I'm coming up with now, including a piece that I'm going to drop soon in a totally different neighborhood in Little Havana. Instead of haiku, I'm exploring with refranes cubanos. So like Cuban sayings.
Okay.
That, you know, in English, we have them like it's raining cats and dogs.
Yes.
And Cubans, they say things a little more colorful, you know, like there's one that I absolutely love that says, camarón que se duerme se lo lleva la corriente, which means the shrimp that falls asleep is going to get taken by the current. You know?
Okay.
So,
all right.
In other words, don't sleep. And
I know.
Keep it moving and stay awake and keep doing what you can do.
Yeah, watch your back.
Yeah.
All right. So this is a piece that you are currently working on or something you have in a project?
Yeah, it's almost finished. I'm going to put it up in Little Havana next week. Yeah.
Next week? Oh my, I'm going to have to be there.
Branching out a little bit.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, yes. I mean, Little Havana, there's a lot happening over there.
Yes, definitely.
There's a lot happening over there. And then you mentioned Didi, who has a studio over there, and so many other artists.
Yeah, I love her. She's great.
Oh, she's awesome. I mean, she was on the cover of the Token of the Wall more than 10 years ago. She was on a podcast last year. She's a great, great, great artist.
Talk about inspiration. She was my daughter's 5th grade art teacher.
Yes, she was an art teacher.
She was my daughter's 5th grade art teacher in 2020. And midway through the year, she quit to do art full time. And I could not have been more proud or more happy. I mean, I was sad for my child because she was losing an incredible educator, but I was so proud and so happy and so inspired that this woman is just chasing her dreams and doing the thing, you know, she's going out making art and hustling. It was so inspirational to me.
She is. And that's funny that you mentioned earlier that you were doubting yourself being an artist. This is also something that we talked about it in the podcast. She said some people actually told her, you're a teacher, you're not an artist. And she doubted herself for a really, really long time until she found the strength to say, okay, I'm an artist and I want to live as an artist and I want to live for what I do as an artist. So this is the next step that you're going to have to jump in maybe.
Yeah. I wish someday that I could do like a fence. I wish someday that I could do, you know, large scale pieces like Olek does. I just don't have the resources or the army of people at my disposal that I could cover an entire facade of a building, but maybe someday. And that's the thing is I'm allowing myself to think like, just hang another wrap, just keep making your art. And maybe someday, who's to say that it doesn't happen, you know?
Just like the graffiti writers. they start very, very often with just one marker and do a little tag.
Yeah.
Tag. And eventually they get into some pieces that got more and more and more intricate. And then they use colors, and then they use different tips for the spray cans that they use. So you have the exact same way of thinking. That's why I see you as yarn graffiti, or this is a yarn graffiti, what you do.
Basically, yeah.
Well, it has been called yarn graffiti. I read this as I was quite surprised to see this. But this is a way to express yourself. You are using words too.
Yes.
Letters.
Yes.
So which is also the essence of the graffiti. I was very fortunate a few months ago to have one of the original graffiti writers in the podcast, Kates, who's been doing graffiti since the late 70s.
Oh, very cool.
This was very interesting to find out how every neighborhood had their own graffiti style.
Yeah.
And they were competing. That's why they eventually got into some crews. And back in the 80s, this was pretty tough. So there's still something of that nature happening here.
Street art has such a rich history, and such a beautiful history, like the graffiti, the tagging, the murals. And I will just hope that in some small way, I'm adding something to that history, something new, something different, something colorful. And whether or not yarn bombing is accepted as a form of street art, it doesn't matter. I'm just compelled to do it, and I'm compelled to keep throwing it up there,
Great.
And hopefully doing it in a way that is respectful of all the people that came before, and all the people who still to this day practice street art and the community of it in such an interesting and cool way,
Very, very, very cool way. And it's also actually something you can touch. I'm sure a lot of people, when they see your piece on the fence or something, they're compelled to touch it, to feel it, to say, okay, what is it? What did she use? What kind of material? So there's also a sensory aspect of your art.
And I welcome that. Absolutely. Touch it, like run your hands over it. There's different textures. It feels different. It's interesting too, because when I crochet with the plastic bags, it feels completely different than if I crochet with yarn. The yarn is so much softer. It weathers a lot more. So it changes over time. And all the materials I use, they're just so different and they feel so different. Touch them. Touch my pieces. I welcome that. Run your hands over it.
If you really, really have to take it down from the fence, make sure that you just love it.
That's all I ask.
Yes.
Give it a good home.
Give it a good home. And thank you so much for sharing your art.
Yes, thank you. I absolutely... I have loved this journey. I mean, it's been such a short journey so far. I've only been at it for a little over a year, but I've absolutely loved being on this journey. I've loved sharing it with the people that I've shared it with. I'm grateful to the people who have encouraged me and mentored me. And I'm grateful to be here, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to be on this podcast. Really, I am.
Thank you so much, Gina. I'm very, very happy to catch you at a time where we mentioned Diana Didi. When I met her 10 years ago, 12 years ago, she was just kind of starting also her career. And I've met so many artists 10, 12 years ago who were just starting their career, and now they've been blossoming and they travel the country. So I'm glad that I caught you at the right time.
Yeah.
Now.
I'm not going to be the sleeping shrimp,
No, don't be the sleeping shrimp. No, don't be the sleeping shrimp. All right, Gina, thank you so, so much for sharing your story, sharing your art, sharing the message that you are putting into your art, those haikus.
Yes.
I hope I'm not the only one who learned about haikus.
Yeah.
But this is so, so, so interesting, those little catchphrases. So read them. And once again, thank you, Gina, for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
It has been incredible.
Yes. Like I said, I'm grateful and humbled by the opportunity.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Well, guys, I hope you really enjoyed the podcast. If you enjoyed, please make sure that you hit that like button or subscribe to the podcast wherever you are choosing to listen to your podcast, to any streaming platform. All right. We love you all, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks with another artist who I am about to interview, who's also doing some different kind of art and street art. All right. This is all I'm going to say for today. We'll see you soon. Stay tuned. Bye-bye now. Bye.